Support for Radio Friends comes from OsteoStrong. Improvements in bone density, strength, and power can be achieved by weekly 5-minute no-sweat sessions on their 4-spectrum machines. These isometric robotic machines safely emulate high-impact loading on different parts of the skeletal system, which stimulates activity in bone-building cells. Balance and agility can be improved by 2-minute sessions on vibration plates. Every session is supervised by a trained coach. Learn more on Facebook or call to set up a complimentary wellness assessment and session. Good morning. Welcome to Radio Friends on Thursday, March the 9th. We're going to talk about financial wisdom today with Professor Emeritus John Howe, University of Missouri, Professor Emeritus. Good to have you here, John.
Great to be back. Thank you, Paul.
We know John by the book, The Foolish Corner, that you've written, and we've talked to you about money matters many times. But today, what do you want to talk about?
Well, today is a little more psychology, which is part of behavioral economics. Yeah. But it's really, we can think of financial angles perhaps, but we're really going to talk about decision making in groups and as individuals. And there's a phenomenon. I'm going to tell you a story.
All right.
And I will admit to your listeners who know this story, I'm simplifying it a bit. But in the early 1950s in Chicago, a woman claimed, anyway, to begin to get messages from aliens.
Messages from aliens?
Yes. Okay. And the aliens, they said they were called the Guardians.
Okay.
And she received these messages from the aliens through what she called automatic writing. Her hand would just write these messages out.
Now, this is a true story.
It's a true story. I mean, I'm reporting what she reports.
Right.
And so forth. Right. So, and as she talked to people about this, she got a bit of a gathering. I mean, a group of people that were interested in these messages from the aliens. And then in 1954, it wasn't a big group. I mean, it wasn't like, she didn't have a following like the Kardashians or something, but by standards of the early 50s, she had a pretty big following. And in 1954, the aliens chimed in with some good news and some bad news. And the bad news was that Chicago and other cities were going to be inundated by a flood, completely wiped out on Christmas Day of 1954. The good news was that because of her dedication to the Guardians, again, these aliens that were allegedly sending messages, that they would arrive in flying saucers, that was the phrase at the time, and pick up her and her followers and whisk them to safety, presumably on another planet or something of the sort.
Okay.
And I can tell you, where is this going? We're almost going to get there. Okay. So on Christmas Eve, they're supposed to gather, according to the request from the aliens, they're supposed to gather on Christmas Eve, and sometime maybe around midnight as it progresses into December 25th, the aliens are going to show up, pick these people up, save them from the
flood,
the terrible flood. So they gather, and I've kind of simplified this story. There's some backstory to this, but we don't have a lot of time, and this captures the essence of the story. So basically, they gather on Christmas Eve. And as I think none of us are going to be surprised to know, nothing happens.
Right.
There is, first of all, no deluge, and there are no aliens in flying saucers. So the question here then is, what do you, and I don't want to put you on the spot, you don't have to guess, but all of us can play along with this thought. What do you think, how did the people in their group react to this non-appearance of the aliens?
Well, probably they had some reason why it didn't occur.
That is,
they were coming up with a rational reason as why this didn't happen the way she
exactly
said.
Right. So, for example, one explanation given at the time was the aliens, the Guardians, were testing us. They were just testing us to make sure that we do what we said. This is just a drill. That's all.
I think that's a good excuse.
So that's a good excuse. So really what they're doing, another way of thinking about this is that they're doubling down on that, no, the aliens are real. They're coming. This was just a test or something of that sort.
Right.
So I think you hit the nail on the head there, Paul. So this is called escalation of commitment.
And we see this in politics.
Oh my gosh! In fact, in recent times, let me quickly say, you can find stories like this from the 1500s, And you can, and most recently, I've found some research where people are using this idea of escalation of commitment to look at QAnon. And as you know, judge after judge rejected the notion that the election was stolen, they doubled down. No, the election was stolen. So this is a pervasive across time, across cultures, and so forth. So we might ask ourselves, you know, why does this occur? You know, I mean, you look at that objectively, it's like
it's human nature.
It is very much.
It's human nature because we do not want to be proved wrong.
And I think that is an excellent point. That we want to be right. It makes us uncomfortable that, oh my gosh, I made a mistake. You know?
I really think it is human nature. It's amazing you brought this up today because, I can't go into politics, but I have family and friends who we disagree on certain things. They will not change their mind because they do not want to be proven wrong. That's my belief.
No, I think that's exactly right.
And I think we all are guilty of that.
Oh, sure. I mean, these are very human tendencies, you know.
Yeah.
And when we have another way of thinking about it is when we have two conflicting ideas in our mind, like the aliens are real or I really made a bad mistake, right? We need to kind of dismiss one of them in order to be just psychologically more comfortable. And so, that's called cognitive dissonance when you're holding these conflicting ideas. And, so you got to get rid of one of them. And, related to a bias that you and I have talked about in the past, there's a thing called confirmation bias. And so you might look for evidence that the aliens really do exist, reports of UFOs, for example, and glom onto that. Like, I'm going to hang on to the idea that these guardians are going to come. They didn't come on Christmas Day, and we didn't get the flood, but, they're going to come, right? And so forth.
So we just have to watch out with our human nature. And if we keep an open mind, and dialogue with people that we disagree with, maybe things would be better all the way around.
You're way ahead of me all of today, and the reason I say that is that, one of the things I always ask in the book and elsewhere, perhaps on my newsletter, is like, what can we do given that we know about these biases, these human characteristics that we have? And I think what you propose is an excellent solution. Have civil discussions with people who have different views and try to figure out where they're coming from. And just one quick suggestion is that some people actually have a personal kind of board of directors or board of advisors. Now, these are people that you trust, and they're going to say, John, you're nuts for believing this, right? And, you have to trust these people to give you bad news when it's bad news, right? But so talking to people, having some trusted friends or advisors is a great antidote to this particular problem.
And sometimes it's good to talk to people who think differently than you. Perhaps you're not always right.
Well, yes.
Perhaps I'm not always right. The other person may be right sometimes too. So you gotta have discussion about it in a friendly way. Right?
Exactly.
All right. If you want more information, you've got a website. People can go
a newsletter.
Johnhowe.substack.com.
Indeed.